Smith, Kevin O'Leary et évidemment Donald Trump. I think it was really important yesterday as we met with first ministers from across the country that premiers have an opportunity to express the interests of their citizens, of their industry, of their area. Certainly, I don't blame Danielle Smith for speaking up for her industry. That's part of her job. But every single premier other than Danielle Smith then chose to put Canada first.
Is that they're not taking a Canada first approach. They're taking a Liberal Party first approach. They're turning the Americans and the Trump administration in particular into the bad guys so that they can campaign against them for their own personal political benefit, and that is not good for the country.
The political clash between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has captured national attention. And at the heart of this conflict is a disagreement about priorities and governance. Trudeau has advocated for national unity, calling on Canada's provinces to come together under the banner of Team Canada to address shared challenges. In comparison, Danielle Smith has stood firm in her refusal to subordinate Alberta's regional interests to a broader federal agenda. As the premier of a province that is heavily reliant on its oil industry, she has taken a stand against the national consensus, arguing that Alberta's economic stability cannot be sacrificed for what she perceives as an abstract and impractical notion of unity. As we move forward, I'd like to ask you a quick favor to subscribe and like this video. It takes just a second and helps us so much. Central to Trudeau's argument is the idea that Canada must present a unified front in the face of proposed U.S. tariffs, which he describes as unjust and detrimental to both Canadian and American consumers. By working together, Trudeau argues, Canada can protect its industries, safeguard jobs, and negotiate from a position of strength.
The reality is, the proposed tariffs by the incoming American administration will raise costs on American consumers, will put American jobs at risk. That's not something anyone wants because our economies are so intertwined. We want to see American jobs created and prospering alongside the Canadian jobs and prosperity that we successfully create here. So we're going to continue to explain to Americans that bringing in tariffs on goods from Canada is basically raising prices on American consumers, is raising taxes on the backs of Americans. Nobody wants that. But if indeed the incoming administration moves forward with these unfair and unjust tariffs, Canada will respond.
Smith has been outspoken in her belief that the proposed agreement, which was aimed at showcasing Canadian unity in the face of economic threats, posed a significant risk to her province's economic well-being. For Alberta, oil is not just a regional asset. It is the lifeblood of the province's economy, providing jobs, generating revenue, and fueling growth. By signing a national agreement that could potentially jeopardize Alberta's oil industry, Smith feared that the province would be forced to absorb the negative consequences of policies designed to address more general concerns about national unity. In this context, Smith's stance can be viewed as a bold assertion of provincial sovereignty. She has positioned herself as a defender of Alberta's autonomy, arguing that the province should be free to prioritize its economic interests without being forced to conform to a federal strategy that may not align with its unique circumstances. The irony of the current situation cannot be overlooked.
Is that they're not taking a Canada first approach. They're taking a Liberal Party first approach. They're turning the Americans and the Trump administration in particular into the bad guys so that they can campaign against them for their own personal political benefit, and that is not good for the country.
Alberta has long faced opposition from environmental groups and certain political factions within Canada that have sought to block the development of pipelines, vital infrastructure to transport the province's oil to market. These opponents argue that pipeline expansion poses environmental risks, leading to years of delays and political friction. However, now Alberta finds itself caught in a similarly frustrating position. The threat of U.S. tariffs, which could undermine Alberta's oil industry by raising costs and creating new economic barriers.
I respect that she's concerned about protecting her energy, and that's her choice. That is her choice. But I have a little different theory. I have a different theory that protect your jurisdiction, but country comes first. Canada's a priority.
Trudeau's response to Danielle Smith's refusal to align with the other provincial premiers has been harsh, with the Prime Minister taking direct aim at what he perceives as a disruptive challenge to national unity. For Trudeau, the failure of Smith to join in a collective stance with the other premiers is seen as a significant political misstep. He has been vocal in his criticism, portraying her actions as a deviation from what he believes is the core principle of Canadian unity.
The world is in a complicated place right now. We're seeing massively shifting geopolitics. All the more reason for us to pull together as a North America, creating jobs, creating prosperity, and competing successfully with the world. That will continue to be my focus. That is what we're standing up and fighting for all together as part of Team Canada, and that's how we're going to continue to create prosperity on both sides of the border.
A principle that requires provinces to put the collective good ahead of individual regional concerns. The challenge, of course, is that these two ideologies, federal cooperation and provincial autonomy, are often at odds, and the friction between them has caused countless political debates throughout Canada's history. From the early days of Confederation to the ongoing debates over energy policy and natural resource management, the relationship between the federal government and provinces has been marked by moments of cooperation and confrontation. The political clash between Trudeau and Smith has not only caused public debate, but also fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. Some have suggested that Trudeau's government may be leveraging the economic tensions between Alberta and the rest of Canada for political advantage. This theory posits that the federal government could be using the growing rift over Alberta's oil industry and the looming U.S. tariffs as a convenient diversion from domestic controversies that might otherwise demand more attention. By framing Smith's stance as a rebellious departure from national unity, Trudeau may be attempting to solidify his position among voters who view provincial defiance as a threat to Canadian cohesion. Adding to the intrigue are theories suggesting that there may be covert alliances at play, influencing the course of this political drama. Some speculate that certain factions within the federal government or even corporate interests may be quietly supporting Trudeau's position in order to maintain the status quo, which favors a centralized approach to governance. The idea is that these behind-the-scenes players, whether they be bureaucratic elites or industry lobbyists, could be exerting their influence to ensure that Alberta's oil wealth doesn't disrupt their preferred economic framework. At the same time, there are whispers of bureaucratic oversight, a common feature in robust federal systems, fueling the conflict. Critics of Trudeau argue that his government's response to Alberta's needs has been disrupted by an overly bureaucratic and detached approach. This oversight is often depicted as a failure to grasp the urgency of Alberta's economic challenges, especially concerning its reliance on oil and gas. Some even suggest that this disconnect between the federal government and Alberta is not just a result of differing policy priorities, but a symptom of a more fundamental issue: the inability of Ottawa to truly understand or respect the unique needs of provinces like Alberta, which have economies that are less diversified and more reliant on industries that are under increasing scrutiny, like oil extraction. However, Smith supporters see her as a bold advocate for Alberta's sovereignty, resisting what they view as an overreaching federal government. To these individuals, her refusal to sign the joint statement represents a principled stand for the economic well-being of her province, especially considering Alberta's reliance on its oil industry. The outcomes of this clash hold significant implications for Canadian politics and governance moving forward. If Trudeau's vision prevails, it could reinforce the idea that in times of crisis, Canada must unite, with each province contributing to the broader national strategy. Such a resolution could strengthen the notion of collective responsibility and set a precedent for how future governments tackle cross-provincial issues. On the other hand, if Smith's stance gains traction, it could shift the conversation in Canadian politics toward a greater emphasis on provincial sovereignty. This shift might open the door for other provinces to push for more autonomy, potentially reshaping the landscape of Canadian federalism in ways that could either strengthen or weaken the Union. But what do you think? Will Trudeau's approach to national unity be capable of overcoming Smith's challenge for Alberta's autonomy? Or will this be a defining moment in the quest for greater provincial independence? Let us know in the comments.